You need to learn to think, not to know. The art of thinking, asking the questions of why is really, we haven't had a lot of that because we haven't had to think across these verticals in these ways that the dynamic digital era is really kind of forcing. Our industry is amazing. We have so many thinkers and now I think it's time for them to shine. Hi, this is Lisa Wardlaw and this is the future of insurance.
Lisa, I'm very glad to sit down with you. I'm always glad to sit down with you. And I've gotten to do it live for real. For anyone who hasn't taken in your energy in person, it's worth it. But thank you for giving me some time today.
Super excited to be here. And yeah, you and I get the amazingness of, well, we did originally meet on video.
Yes.
Then we met a lot live. And then we've been having, the back and forth. How do we get time on video? Which I think is interesting.
Video shouldn't be, it was super easy for so long. And now it's actually getting tricky again.
Yeah.
But you, I think everyone knows who you are already, but they may maybe some people don't, or they don't even know the half of it. And so can you just before we jump in, who are you? What is it that you do? And where did you come from? What's the background that got you to this point?
Why is she here in our industry? Can we get rid of her? Or you can stop following me on LinkedIn. Either way, no. So I've been in insurance for 27 years, Bryan. I started in more of a traditional, finance and accounting. Spent my first decade at PwC, and then I kind of rotated through companies, working in the corporate world, kind of climbing my way up to being CFO, became a CFO, and then I pivoted into becoming a COO. And then I started working on digital strategy, and then I went insurtech. And so lots of amazing companies along the way, ING Voya, Farmers, Munich Re, just you learn a lot when you get to experience a lot. And then my midlife crisis, 2 years ago, instead of buying a sports car, I was like, I'm going to go insurtech. So I went insurtech, and not just as an advisor, I call it insurtech undercover. I really went to work in insurtechs for founders, learned a lot as well. And now I call myself a personal trainer or a coach to insurtech founders and corporates doing large scale innovation.
Okay. And in that work, you still get to work with some big traditional folks, but you also get to work with the young, new, upcoming.
I do both. So,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do large scale corporate innovations, transformations, and I also help startups with their go-to-market, their product market fit, their strategy. And then a lot of times I will pull in startups, techniques, or opportunities and innovation that I've been exposed to and working with kind of in my portfolio or my awareness. And I will pull them in on some of my transformation and corporate projects I'm working on. So it's a nice fit.
See, people who are no, you can only be in one of those two lanes. You can't do both. And I was straddling both lanes myself, and there's almost more of a benefit to them being so different, and the skills you bring to each and the things you get into with each being so different, because it gives you this steady stream of, I don't know, different perspective and ways of approaching things that you could feed to both of them.
Yeah. So so funny you would say that, because I was having a mentoring discussion this week with a younger professional in insurance. And so shout out to all the young professionals out there. And she was really struggling with this linearity of do I go up or over? And I looked at her and I'm like, okay, you're gonna think I'm insane, but you do both.
Yeah.
And she's like, how? And I'm like, that's actually what makes you really effective at consulting and advising. So it's I call it longitude and latitude. And our industry is clearly very longitudinal. We go deep, and you have to be an expert in our industry. You know this. You can't not know. You can't just talk up here. You got to know it. And a lot of times we love to call bluff on people that don't know it. But interestingly, on our industry, because we're so conditioned to be deep, that very few people go wide. And so people like yourself, Bryan, that have had the experience of going wide are really the people that add so much value, because you've got to be able to process, especially in today's day and age of innovation, you've got to be able to rapidly process not only the conceptual level of what you're trying to innovate and solve for, the strategy and the concepts, but you've got to really get down into solving for the how. And when you solve for the how, you've got to kind of bring in almost all these verticals at once, like an accordion. You've got to squish them together and say, okay, how am I going to apply that? So to your point, I think going from the insurtech to the corporate as well as cross-functionally, I would add that as well as a lens. I think that's what many people that don't always succeed immediately in innovation, I would say it's probably not the people, it's probably that core competency or capability of being able to think longitude and latitude kind of almost in parallel.
Yeah. We definitely, I think as an industry, we struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because it's not historically what's been rewarded is like getting deeper and deeper expertise. And then, eventually like you're the CEO, but you came from this background and people say like, well, that the CEO is really an underwriter or really a finance person or really a this or really a that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they are, but they have to be able to broaden out. They can't hold that like monofunction bias. You,
So when I
you're
first
like, you're
left
proof of that,
corporate,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
no. And when I first left corporate, there was a book. I don't even know why it popped up in my like Apple books or whatever. I ended up getting it on audio podcast, and it's called Fuzzies and Techies: Why the Liberal Arts Will Rule the Digital World. I've referenced it a lot. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm
Yeah.
always commenting about it. Scott Hartley. So shout out to Scott Hartley, who's the author that wrote it. He's also a founding member of The Fund in New York. And I obsessively called him and I'm like, I have to know the person that wrote this book. He was like, okay, hi, nice to meet you. He was amazing. We had like the best conversation. I was so grateful for his time. But the immediate question I asked him, Bryan, which was to your point, I was like, do linear industries, so industries that have heavy math, engineering, think actuarial science, right?
Yeah.
Do linear industries struggle with this concept more than non-linear industries? And he was like, that's kind of like, he didn't take it to that degree in his book. And,
Yeah.
he writes other things, but he and I started talking about that. And I kind of became obsessed with this concept of non-linearity within linear professions, which I'm going to be like a little bit of a kind of click down another
Yeah.
level. Liberal arts, the pure sciences like math and like, I was a chemistry major, for example, in a liberal arts school, right? So like
Okay.
the pure sciences are liberal arts in nature. The heavy on STEM and engineering or, actuarial science, of course, would not be in the liberal arts programs. But I kind of wondered in this digital age, to me, it's always been like, you need to learn to think, not to know. Knowing is, of course, assumed and presumed, to your point, but the art of thinking, asking the questions of why, is really what we've almost been able to. I'm not saying people don't think, by the way, but we haven't had a lot of that because, like, we haven't had to think across these verticals in these
Yeah.
ways that the dynamic digital era is really kind of forcing.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, our industry is amazing. We have so many thinkers, and now I think it's time for them to shine, right?
Yeah. Well, so I'm really curious especially I guess in your corporate work, when you get into trying to help these organizations evolve, transform, I feel like it's less about like they need this solution or work with that vendor or, like you need this product where it's more about like the organizational personality, like you're saying, like getting the organization to think, because we can drop like solution X in there, but tomorrow they're only going to use it exactly as they were told to use it and not see the
Yeah.
possibilities with it or the connections. Is that more of what your work is like almost like behavioral science more so than science?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. What I will say is so before I left and did the work I do now, I used to interact with lots of solution integrators, lots of
Yeah.
vendors, and I would constantly be frustrated. And I would say I was definitely a demanding client. It's like, so I'll take
It's
that
okay.
one. You can imagine what it's like working with me on any normal day and imagine what it's like when I'm paying your bills. But the one thing that I think people struggle with, and it still is like something that I work with my corporate clients on, as well as my insurtechs. It's like we take something as at. So we take a solution and we think of it as a plug, like I'm going to plug this in here and then it's going to work. And so
Yeah.
that's why we've seen a lot of digital or automation. And we haven't seen a lot of what I would define as innovation or transformation. Now, I used to have to pay my own way in innovation back in my corporate role. So I understand the pay to play concept, and I understand taking costs and strain out through digital or automation. But that was, to me, that was a means to an end, not the end itself. So to your question, what a lot of people struggle with is they interact a lot with vendors and technology, and they've got a lot of like pain in terms of like, oh my gosh, we're not digital or automated enough. And they think that that's the only thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But culturally, and what customers, let's kind of take it out of even inside the organization and think of what a customer wants.
Yeah.
A customer is looking for an entirely new end-to-end experience beyond these lineages.
Yeah.
And what happens a lot is we're dealing with that customer as like, okay, like we need to make your claim more digital, more expedient. We need to make your point of sale, upsell, cross sell, buy sell, all that more experiential in nature. We need to automate underwriting, but what they're not doing is saying like, how do we do this in a totally different way? So Bryan, I spend a lot of time challenging basically the way we build innovation muscle. Like, what are we really building? Why are we really building it? And how? And I literally am working on a project right now where probably in 1 week, I probably could be quoted more times than I should admit. Like 90% of my week, I could be quoted saying, you are telling me the how, not the what. Because very few people actually understand the what, because we've been doing the how for, it's like trying to teach someone how to ride a bike. It's like, get on and pedal, right? So that's a lot of what I spend time doing, is lifting it up to that more conceptual what, then the how, then you unlock lots of different ways to accomplish the how. So I'll stop there, but that's a big hurdle.
Well, the how is why so often it's technology for technology's sake. And like, we lose sight of, well, why were we doing this in the first place? Like, what was the problem you're trying to solve? Not just, they showed us this really cool thing that we should be using. Like, should be using is not a customer need or a business problem, or doesn't mean there isn't one, but you have to know why you're doing this, right? That like, it's not just about plug in tech A with tech B.
Right. I not only agree with that, but then I've seen I'll say, playing devil's advocate a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I've seen that become the excusism for, what I'll say is like poorly or not intuitively designed innovation or solutions. Well, we're just trying to solve a problem with tech, and tech's not and I'm like, okay, but what happens? And again, I'm living this right now on an example I'm working with. Technology does unlock solutioning that you didn't have as options 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about, there's a lot of like, so I'll keep it with insurance, but some examples that aren't like specific, like niche on an insurtech. So I'll take it out, like abstracted a smidge. Personalized federated learning techniques as an example of like come so far, even in the last 18 months. Like MIT is publishing new, like I know a startup that just kind of won their award and broke the code on this, meaning I'll break that down. What that means is we can leave all data where it is, at rest, on the car, on the person, in the home, etc. So Bryan, like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, if I was trying to solve for a machine learning algorithm and how I wanted to, do automated underwriting or deterministically do X, Y, or Z, I wouldn't have had the optionality to design that solution the way I do today.
Yeah.
So to your point, that's where this like connection to like what's going on almost like in real time and in innovation and capability. I'll say it as like a refinement of capabilities that are now activated or enabled, filtering against what was fundamentally what was the problem I was trying to solve. You almost have to iterate on that constantly. And I find that projects and programs, because of all the cultural change involved, it's like implementation fatigue. So it's like, I don't want to iterate on that again. Well, like probably every 6 to 12 months, something is being released that fundamentally changes the optionality that you would have picked when you were designing the solution. So I don't know that we've yet gotten there specifically in insurance.
Yeah. Well, so I always ask people like, where do you think things are headed? But I have a desire to ask you something different. In the like, it's the future of insurance. I got to ask you looking ahead, but I don't mean this to sound hopeless, so I hope no one's taking it that way. Do you think we're ever going to change? And I say that, like, all the things that you're describing, I'm going back to like my first days and my first job in insurance, and the
Yeah.
frustrations with change and systems and like all the things that we've all been frustrated with. And I fast forward to today, and yeah, like the details are all different. The tools are different, the people, the way, like everything's different, but in effect, it's
Yeah.
still kind of the same problem ultimately, like culturally as an industry. And I don't want to sound hopeless, and I don't want to say there's been zero progress, but ultimately, like, we are often in the same spot. I do see it amongst carriers on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Um, do you think there really is a change in sight, or do you think this is sort of like, this is who we are, and so we'll just continue to need to, the people who want to see things better will continue to need to fight for it?
Oh, okay. So so I think no matter what industry you're in,
Yeah.
regardless, the people who want to see things better will continue to need to fight for it in any industry, in any society.
Yeah.
Because the people that for a moment are the outliers that see the patterns and the trends and see it at a deeper level always have to kind of be, the revered rebellionists, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to rebel within the embracing of the community. So you can't be an outlier and ostracized from the community. So I'm going to get to this in a minute.
All right.
What I thought where I thought the question was going is, given how easy it is to be diverse now and apply your capabilities to other industries, are we at risk of losing the people that the industry needs in order to make this happen? And I would say that is actually one of my fundamental concerns. So on one hand, it's like new talent and new entrants, yes, but and by the way, I work a lot on like mentoring and new people and getting them interested in insurance. So I'm not saying that's not important. I am much more concerned about the people like yourself, like other people that hang out in our insurtech influencers groups, right?
Yeah.
That are credible, confident, skilled, and have enough acumen to carry the rebellious message in. Because you and I both know, if you come in from the outside, no disrespect to outsiders, man, you have a heavy road to climb in terms of, we will just break you in terms of the nuances of what you didn't know. And we love calling it out, right?
Yeah.
We are, to your point, we are deep longitudinally. But the people that are the latitudinal, when they intersect right with the longitudinal and the rebelling, like how do we kind of create the inflection point? It takes a swell of us doing that together. And so what I really focus on a lot is creating that community where we don't feel isolated or alone, or I'm sure many times you and I both probably, are we insane? Are we the only people that see this? Or deflated or defeated, and we're all going to fall down and get back up. But there's enough of us driving this forward at scale. That's what I think will move our industry. And I have to tell you, I don't think we're alone in that. If I look at, there's others industries that might be sexier than ours, but I think you have this same like anchoring to the tentacles that strap and bind you down. And and I have a little hashtag I use all the time, which is breaker of status quo. And I usually wear a chain to remind me that we're trying to unchain mediocrity, right, Bryan? So that would be my answer to that question. So I'm definitely not hopeless, but I do understand what you're saying, because a lot of times it's like, how many times can I hit my head against that brick wall?
Yeah. I've said this multiple times where I referenced this meeting I was in with the pitch, and like everything went great, and the carrier's like, yeah, we're definitely going to move ahead. We want to do a pilot. And then the head of the unit pulled the founder aside, and he's like, just so you know, while we're saying yes, it's still going to take us at least 18 months just to get the pilot going, because that's just how we work. And is that last phrase that, like, that's the thing I'm still stuck with, is we hear that every day. It's like this like giving in and like, well, we're just slow and complicated. Oh, well. It's like, no, you run the whole thing. Like you actually could make that different, but you're giving in instead of making it different. That's from like, we actually need people to push past that. And in like the 25 years I've been here, I still hear phrases like that, you know, every day. Maybe instead of, it used to be 27 months and now it's 18. And then, but then you've heard me use my bank robbery analogy where it's like, yeah, you robbed 10 banks before and 5 now. Like, good for you. That's awesome. You're still not supposed to rob banks. So stop cheering for yourself and like stop robbing banks.
Well, and I think that relates. So I am starting this with a company that I do some work with. I'm starting this like basically eliminate the sand trap or the of the POC. So I'm starting some work on that. And I also think that VCs and investors need to understand that the timeline to penetrate insurance has to be in line with, to your point, like even if it's good and they say we want to do it, there's going to be an 18-month window to getting to market, et cetera. And so that part of it is also that our funding timeline and expectations aren't aligned to market contract conditions. And everybody will say, oh, I know commercial contracts take 18 to 24 months, blah, blah, blah. But I have founders literally that I work for that's like, I need these 3 contracts in 6 months. And I'm like, I mean, even if I were the fairy godmother and had the wand and, you know, could turn the pumpkin into the carriage, that's just not going to happen in our industry. And your funding has to support that. So I think 2 things. We have to attack it. I'm attacked from both sides kind of person. We have to attack and eliminate the POC and conservative nature in our industry of like, let's get something to market and then eject if we don't like it. It's fine. Clearly that's different if you're doing rates and filings. I'm not saying that. And then on the right side, it's also insuring, which is now not a good time because everyone's raising and they're probably like almost seeing a lot. But we have to assign those timelines to the insurance contractual cycles too, right?
Yeah, we have to tell an honest story when we're fundraising as well. And don't just get one of VCs pushing you. That doesn't mean you have to just nod. You need to be like, and the good ones will actually appreciate your ability to have that debate with them intelligently. And it may be a test, right? They may be looking for like, wow, you know, I wish it was faster, but they really understand what the complexity is. And so I feel more safe in an investment there because I know we're going to know what's really going on and not be, you know, getting the smoke screen every time.
Yeah. And I think so I think the hurdle that a lot of founders are caught in right now is you need ARR in order to get to that next raise or that next level or like whatever that is, which is fair for the investors to say, like, I'm not considering you until you break X amount in the US, or I'm not considering you until you have an ARR of Y. And then what happens to a founder, if you just think about it, is, you know, their seed money only gets them so far to build something that can be enterprise grade and worthy. And so they don't know how to get to that next tranche of investing without the ARR. They can't get the ARR within the cycles and the timelines because insurers are naturally slower. And so what a lot of times they do is they start doing consulting services, which then changes their business model. And so it's a little bit of, I guess I would say to a founder, figure the dynamics of that out up front. Yeah. Because it's really difficult when you've already hired 10 to 20 people and you're already here, there, and everywhere. And then you get to that next tranche and you're like, I can't get the ARR I need to get to the next level, but I don't have the timeline for the burn that I have.
Yeah.
And to me, by the way, Bryan, this was before the economic tide started shifting, before all that.
Yeah. This is pre-COVID easily. Yeah. I mean, it's an age-old problem for any startup, but this isn't a problem that just developed because money got harder to come by for a little while. Yeah. Lisa, we could easily do another 3 hours, maybe 4. But we both have to run. Thank you so much for sitting down. I really, it's always good to get time with you, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on the future of insurance. And hopefully we gave people some hope about the future of insurance, not just,
yes.
I think it's good to keep it real.
You gave it back to them. Thank you for that. Thank you so much to Lisa for taking some time to sit down and share some thoughts with everyone. She has a really cool background and perspective and energy that she brings to this industry. Lisa's awesome. You should absolutely follow her. But I do wonder, for those of you listening, watching, are you in that camp that she was talking about, of people who are engaged today, but we got to keep engaged for tomorrow? I assume you are, because why else would you be paying attention to a show like this, right? These are the people, all of us, that Lisa's talking about, that we need to stay engaged in this industry, stay committed to it, stay excited about it, and be willing to push through some of those tougher moments, those times where, we're frustrated or we're not sure that things are going to work out the way that we hope that they are, or that the industry is still moving too slow. I mean, I even talked about, is there hope? And she's really hopeful about it. But that takes us all staying there, staying committed, and fighting through. So ask yourself, are you in that camp? As a hint, you probably are. How do you stay involved? How do you stay committed to it? How do you stay in the fight to keep pushing this industry forward? I think that's a great challenge for all of us. And if you figure it out, let me know, and let those around you know, because the people around you that you're choosing to engage with are probably in a similar boat. And we need to keep everybody on this track to move the industry forward. So with that, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I hope you'll come back next time, and I will see you then. Thanks, everyone.